the lost episode of the Amazing World of Gumball that never aired. Gumball woke up in his room, but something was wrong. Sunlight fell through the window at an incorrect angle, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. Darwin swam in his fishbowl, but his fish eyes looked directly at Gumball with an expression he had never seen before, empty and knowing at the same time. Going down to the kitchen, Gumball discovered that all objects stood in their places, but their reflections in windows and shiny surfaces showed completely different things. In the toaster's reflection, he saw not bread, but small dark figures waving at him. Nicole was making breakfast, but her movements were too smooth, as if she was dancing to music that no one could hear. At school, all students sat in their seats, but their reflections in the classroom windows showed empty desks. Miss Simeon wrote on the board, but the chalk left behind not words, but strange symbols that disappeared as soon as Gumball tried to read them. Penny smiled at him, but in the glass of her shell, he saw not his reflection, but someone else's face, someone he didn't recognize, but who seemed terribly familiar. During recess, Gumball approached the large mirror in the hallway. His reflection looked at him, but moved with a delay of several seconds. When Gumball raised his hand, his reflection first shook its head, then slowly raised its own. The reflection opened its mouth and silently spoke words that Gumball somehow understood. "You're not where you think you are." At home in the evening, Gumball stood before the bathroom mirror. His reflection no longer followed his movements. It stood motionless and looked directly at him. Slowly, the reflection raised its hand and touched the glass from the inside. Gumball felt cold under his fingers when he touched the mirror from the outside. The glass began to ripple like water, and the reflection's hand passed through it. In the final moment, Gumball understood the truth. He was the reflection. The real Gumball was on the other side of the mirror, and he was just his mirror copy that had gained consciousness. And now, the real Gumball wanted to return to his world.
Lost Amazing World of Gumball episode that never aired. Gumball and Darwin were sitting on their bunk bed. Darwin, as usual, was on the bottom bunk, and Gumball was on the top. The room was filled with muted light filtering through the curtains. Suddenly, a strange sound, like a whisper, came from under the bed. Gumball stopped chewing his peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Darwin, who was reading a comic book, slowly lowered it. "Did you hear that?" Gumball whispered, his eyes wide with curiosity and a touch of fear. Darwin nodded, his fins trembling slightly. The sound repeated, now clearer, as if someone was trying to say something, but the words were distorted. Gumball carefully climbed down from the bed, trying not to wake Anais, who was sleeping in her crib in the corner of the room. Darwin followed him, staying close. They crouched by the bottom bunk, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. The smell of old dust and something sweet hung in the air. Gumball reached out and carefully moved an old toy box that stood against the wall. Behind it, a small opening in the wall was revealed, from which a faint, flickering light emanated. The sound grew louder, now resembling a quiet singing. It was mesmerizing and a little frightening at the same time. "What is that?" Darwin whispered, his voice barely audible. Gumball didn't answer. He was completely absorbed in the sight. The light from the opening began to pulsate, and the singing intensified, turning into a melody that seemed familiar, but they couldn't remember where from. The melody was strangely soothing, yet at the same time, it evoked a sense of unease. Gumball felt his hand involuntarily reach towards the opening. Darwin tried to stop him, but it was too late. As soon as Gumball's fingers touched the flickering light, his body slowly began to dissolve, transforming into glowing particles that streamed into the opening. Darwin recoiled in horror, watching his brother disappear. The singing reached its peak, then suddenly stopped. The light went out and the opening in the wall closed as if it had never been there. The room was silent again, disturbed only by the quiet breathing of sleeping Anais. Darwin was left alone, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked at the top bunk, which was now empty. Gumball's blanket was neatly folded, too neatly. The lost The Amazing World of Gumball episode that was never shown on TV. The patch. It all started like any normal day. Gumball was sitting in class when Bobbert made an announcement. Attention, environment, update 3.6 installed. Reality has been optimized. No one paid attention. Except Gumball. He started noticing strange things. Darwin didn't blink for almost a minute. Teachers were repeating the exact same lines, word for word. On the classroom board, a message appeared. Don't look for the patch. During recess, he saw a student walk through a closed door. Carrie was frozen in midair like a broken animation frame. And then, the seams, thin white lines in the air like cracks. When you looked away, they disappeared. The next morning, it got worse. His room looked slightly off. The walls were tilted. The sunlight hit the floor at a strange angle. His mom stood at the stove and said in a flat voice, "Good morning, Gumball. Good morning, Gumball. Good morning." He ran outside. Elmore was frozen. The trees didn't move. Birds were stuck in the sky. On the school wall, he saw it, a black patch pulsing like a wound. Static leaked from its edges. He touched it, and everything went white. He was now in a blank void. Around him floated broken, glitched-out scenes from old episodes. The audio was reversed. Everything pulsed like it was breathing. Then it stepped out of the shadows. It looked like Gumball, but its face was a flickering TV screen, its eyes pure static. It spoke. You weren't supposed to see it. The patch held everything together. Close your eyes. He tried to scream, but couldn't. The world was shutting down from the inside. He woke up at home. Everything seemed normal. Darwin, Mom, school, all fine. But when he looked into the mirror, he had no pupils. His eyes were blank, white. He blinked, and in the mirror's reflection, a white crack formed on the wall. The screen flickers. Patch failure, subject Gumball. In the final shot, Gumball is sitting in the dark. He slowly turns to the viewer and whispers, "Don't look behind you." The screen goes black.